Hello, here is a little tutorial on transferring a line drawing to a piece of watercolor paper. This is something that is very common among watercolor artists, partly because if they're anything like me, they're a little bit anxious about their drawing skills. Kidding aside, for watercolor paper, every time you draw and erase and draw and erase and draw and erase, it really does sort of beat up the paper in a way that can make it not want to accept color in the way you would like it to. So, a tried and true technique is to figure out a drawing, some sort of drawing. It can certainly, happens to be a computer printed out thing. It can be a drawing that you have worked out on a piece of paper. And this is just for a swatch, but you can do this for all sorts of things. There's a lot of different techniques for doing it, but this one is the what I think of as the least needing XX stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take whatever line drawing I want to be on my piece of watercolor paper. I'm going to take that drawing and I am going to flip it over and I am going to quickly place, this is a 4B Stadler. It doesn't have to be a 4B. I kind of want it soft for a couple different reasons that I'll discuss in a minute. But I'm just laying down some quick graphite. I don't need to be exact about this because as you'll see in a moment, it doesn't really matter where this is. And in fact, you could just do the whole thing. You could smear graphite on the whole thing. That's very similar to what is known as transfer paper. The downside of that, in my humble opinion, is that you can sort of wind up with transfer paper, you can sort of wind up with excess graphite rubbed in around in strange places in your drawing. If you by the way, if you hear a wee in the background, you're not crazy. Just going to try to wait till the landscape folks were done with their current task, but I decided to get going. So I'm stalling because partly I know this is not that exciting. Trying to entertain you guys, tell a few jokes. I'm going to go ahead and not tell a few jokes, but I do want to make sure that there's quick graphite everywhere. And like I said, I could just scribble graphite and smudge it around the whole thing. So, there is a no-nonsense application of graphite. Basically, I know at least everywhere where there's going to be a line that I want to transfer. This step is not critical, but sometimes I will just take a. Don't want to rub too much off because we're going to be using that graphite. We're going to be making that graphite go to the watercolor paper. And because that is something that can sometimes be obvious and sometimes not be obvious, and sometimes it may go down where we want it to, and sometimes it may go down too light and we can't see it. or sometimes we may forget, if you're anything like me, forget a part of your line drawing completely, and then you'd be halfway through your painting and go, hey, wait a second, wasn't there something else there? So what I'm doing here is just taping this to my paper, because it's quite possible I'm going to have to check to see how it's going. And hopefully that was in camera. Check to see how it's going, and come back and do some more if I need. And so I want to make sure it's going to lay down in the same spot, so I don't have to like find out where how to start over and line everything up. So then this is going to be nothing more than, I will take this same pencil. This part is not as critical, but a couple things to keep in mind. What I don't want to do is use a pencil that's really hard. Hey, here's a freebie. This is my favorite pencil and pencil sharpener combo. That was a serious sidebar. But where was I, Mr. Sidebar? If you have a pencil that's too hard, and even something like this is too soft, you can press down too hard to try to transfer the graphite that is there onto the paper. Here, let me do an actual complete rectangle just to see how this works. And really that's sort of all I'm looking for. Hopefully you can see that. I'm sure that's light, but really that I want to keep it light, because I am going to come back and strengthen that drawing, the line drawing on here. But sometimes there's a tendency to say, oh man, I want to make sure that I transfer this, so I could press down really hard here. And depending on how much graphite you've put here, you may get way too dark of a line, and you may also indent the paper, so that every time paint flows in that spot, that will have created a little extra valley, so paint will fall into that valley and always sort of be obvious. It could be a very cool look if you want it, but that's not what I want for this one. The other thing I will say when I'm transferring is that I usually, because I'm right-handed, I usually try to work top left to bottom right. And that is for, wow, that's too much coffee. That's for nothing more than, I want to minimize the kind of smashing down I'm doing all over the line drawing. I will not, here, fast forward if you so desire, because I'll be repeating this several times. If you haven't fast forwarded and you're still here, hi. I don't need to be so it is nice to sort of be somewhat careful, but partly I'm trying to, like I said, indicate where lines are. Oh, look, it picked up my little too much coffee freak out. Sometimes that happens without coffee too. And for something simple like this, you may have noticed there are times when I don't want to even deal with all this, and because it's a repetitive and simple thing, I poked some dots in the corners just so I could at least make a mark of where the corners are, and then it's kind of hard to see, but then I could certainly come back in and just draw it on here, but being fairly confident enough knowing where that should go. There's a great example as I'm talking and thinking and I'm finishing up. I'm not exactly sure. I didn't quite remember where I left off. And keep sort of checking to make sure it's going down. Yep. So, you know, this is not an exact science. It's, like I say, it is one way of doing it. There's more expensive ways, including purchasing a light box, or if you start getting really big, you can get a oh, what are those things? Well, projector. Did I make that one? Yeah, projector, and project something very big up onto a wall, and then tape a piece of paper to that. So there's a lot of different ways, but this is the, I can sort of do this anytime. I can transfer, all I need is a pencil. You know, I don't need transfer paper, I don't need a light box, I don't need a sunny day where I can tape this up onto a window and then the light coming through it. I can put that piece of paper on top and that will show through to where you probably couldn't see any of that. Anyways, there's lots of different ways. I like this because it's no nonsense and it gets the job done. It's not quite as clean as some others, but this is a good technique to know. There you have it. I'm just going to I'm going to strengthen these lines a little bit. I may not. But there you have it, transferring a line drawing.